lap, and I'm really looking forward to discussing that after in our discussion. So my book, We Have Been Lucky in the Midst of Misfortune. We'll talk about how I got that name later. One thing about this book is that my parents, who are no longer alive, figure very large in the book. And so I'll start with this one called Horsewoman and Camels. Right after my mom died, I had a lot of dreams about her. That's probably very common. So this is about that. Horsewoman and Camels. She kept smiling at me, but looking about me too, as if I were the center of a framed collage. There were camels in a row, cupcakes, night lamps, a pigeon, perfume bottles, a bicycle, a drill, a four-post bed, one shoe, her bras hanging on the line, lots of shadow. I wanted to know what was making her so happy. I asked, and she shouted back at me from across the river. I couldn't hear a sound, but I saw her mouth. You. I woke up in the dark light, the wheels of things spinning, wet sparks, horsewoman and camel, sweet mommy, how she left me upright. And here's another one in that same thought in mind. It's called, this is for all of you who are listening and coming out for poetry. It's called My Little Life. My little life, the thought of it. All of us here and now have one. Our loves, what makes us happy, what turns us on, what grows in our garden. Mother would say, as long as there is something on the table to eat. Yes, that's true. But after we have that, we get to look around at who is sitting with us. Let us praise them and the light too. All of us, I think here, except for a few on Zoom, are living in the Bronx. And my poems, a lot of them do take place in the Bronx. And this one's about when they pave the streets and then they put the yellow lines on them. It's called The Yellow Lines. Freshly painted and symmetrical, rising slightly off the pavement. They make me think of what could be done while I'm still here. Winter gone, bougainvillea blooming in the Bronx, while I can remember it was you. Yellow dividing the road. Look, the white cat crosses for the first time. No cars, too early, just she and I and the lines that mark the block and beyond. In this willow-wide summer. Smell the skunk, too, far away now. What bravado to leave your scent like that. You've done it with me, through me, down my belly. Who said we run in parallel with someone we will never meet, but in a dreamscape? Yellow skunk demon, catbird, paint me too. I like to read that poem with people who live in the Bronx. So Deborah and I will talk about the name of this book, but and I have a section of the book that with the same title. I was able to visit the small town where my mother was raised in Rexinga, and like many of us, our connections in terms of being raised by survivors. My mother escaped Germany in 1939, and when I got to see her town, my mother had already passed, And I'm very thankful to two people who devoted their life, Germans, who devoted their life to preserving the history of the Jews in these small towns. And they are named Barbara and Hans. So I was connected with them. That's another whole long story. And they took me through the village, and we stayed with them. And I saw what my mother had talked about my whole life. I always thought she was making these things up, but there they were. So this is for Barbara and Hans. Barbara and Hans drive us to the airport. In the car, we talk Mommy Schwäbisch. Guckemol, look here. Zwetschgekuchen, plum cake, Kartoffelsalat, potato salad. Du bist so dick. You are too fat. Mommy's so close I can feel her. We've arrived and Barbara follows the departure signs until we are by the curb. We open the trunk, pull the suitcases out. All of us overcome in this December Stuttgart morning to almost love somehow, to say that we were here now. Mommy, you never really left, but you did. You had many lives. I want you to come back so we can talk about them, now that I've seen the house and the Neckar swans. Tell me who else you love, who you really were. We roll our bags through the revolving door. Barbara and Hans drive back to Horde. So when my mom came to to America, she lived in Washington Heights, not too far from here, on Audubon Avenue. And this is called On Audubon Avenue. She said the pain ran up her nose behind her eyes until the blood thinners made their way. That moment you bring a straw to your mother's mouth, you're no longer the child. In the green room with the monitors, the beautiful patterns the heart makes. When she was young, the Irish bus driver waited for her on Audubon Avenue en route to her local 65 job. She'd run, red hair and freckles, letting go, turning into an American. I was trained as a journalist, and this is about that. It's called The Interview. Tell me about the time before you knew it all, when you were just starting out buying the things you needed. Peel away the layers of what you want me to think and just talk. Talk about the shoes, the light-colored sweater, the roses, the small roses you said spilled over the fence. Tell me about the first kiss, the way it felt. You knew from then on that kisses stop things like stop signs. Because if I remember, you said that's when you knew that life wasn't going to be a series of forwards, instead more backwards than forwards. At the end of your life, if you're lucky, you'll be right where you started, in the beginning, with the sun and water. Tell me about the coffee with your mother and father before school and the square of sugar. Speak slowly. I grew up with 6 older brothers. So this poem is called 3 Daughters. Once there was an old man who had 3 daughters. One married heaven, the second married fortune, and the third time. On the right of his garden grew kindness, the left knowledge, and through the middle a row of evil sprouted. He built a fence around the plot, leaving a place for love to break through. It surprised him with fruit that he had never tasted before. Once there was an old man who wanted to be young, so he drank from the night and forgot his name. He went fishing and caught a carp with two green eyes and a violin between her fins. Once there was an old man who wouldn't take no for an answer. He asked the world to be quiet, and there was silence. He knocked on my door and asked for light. I gave him a cup, and he turned away. Switching gears a little bit, I have a section on being a mom and all the wonders, and this is called the soft spot. You know, newborns have that. We all had it. The soft spot. The soft spot grows smaller each day. It beats like memory through his hair. He gathers words for later. When he needs them, they will come falling out. The diamond-shaped opening was kind. It let his head mold and fit through me. We spend our lives trying to remember what we knew before the earth closed tightly. And I have two more poems. I think we're doing okay with the time. So my parents knew Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner before they were very famous. This is about that. It's called My Father and Jackson Pollock. Before I was born, my parents were friends with Jackson and Lee when they were neighbors in the Springs. My father wrestled and joked with Jackson. He liked to come over and horse around with my brothers. Looking at his paintings in the museum, I thought, this is what I was then. Lavender mist, yellow islands, white light. Last summer, I went to the tip of Long Island to see his studio and our old house. They were both bolted shut, but the grounds were open. I saw the view of the marsh, the openness, felt the thin, long grass that sways with a whisper. My father watched Jackson paint. He once asked him what he was doing. Jackson said he was painting what he saw. My father remembers the call when Jackson died. One time he'd offered my father a painting. Take any of that crap, he told him. It's a true story. And this is the last poem in the book, and it's called Father Turns 80. My father said he once saw Eleanor Roosevelt wearing a big hat hurrying along 42nd Street. He also saw Winston Churchill getting out of a cab. He said his eyes were so blue, blue like he never had seen. He also talked about his Paris days, when he was a student at the Sorbonne after the war, and how they loved Americans, especially him. Father said these things one Sunday afternoon. I looked at him and wondered, what will my children believe were my moments, stretching out behind them? What will they hold up and say, that was my mother's time? Thank you so much.